All right, hello everybody. Welcome back to the podcast. Today we have a very special guest who is John Von Stade, co-founder of the Caddie Network. Thank you so much for being with me today. And why don't you give me an introduction of yourself and a little bit about your story?
Absolutely. Happy to be here and appreciate the time. So, I have been in the sports marketing, sports media industry for 30 plus years. And most of the time that early in my career was in the sports marketing agency world, where we mostly negotiated on behalf of Fortune 500 clients and handled and managed all their sponsorship strategy in the sports industry. Over time, I eventually evolved more deeply directly into the sports media side, particularly the digital media side, and we're able to co-launch the USA Today Sports Media Group with Gannett, of which we got that program up and running over a 4 year period. And at that point, my business partner and I decided to spin out and launch some additional media companies, one of which was the Caddy Network. And really, what the Caddy Network was intended to do, it's in its core, is a joint venture with the PGA Tour caddies and a license that we have with an organization called the APTC, the American Professional Tour Caddy Association. And that makes up the vast majority of professional caddies across PGA Tour, some on the LPGA Tour, a number on the Champions Tour. So if you look at it, it roughly is around 240 of the working, year in, year out PGA Tour professional caddies. And the goal was really when we launched, which we're now in our seventh year, to focus on bringing opportunities to the golf and sport fan that they traditionally do not get or hear these stories about how the caddies what it's like to live like a caddy on the PGA Tour, what
Hmm.
it's like to experience in the up and downs. You have obviously a lot of caddies that do very well, and then you have a lot of caddies that are real journeymen and just look to find the next bag on a regular basis. But we found it to be an incredible story and wanted to bring that to life to the sports consumer.
Awesome. Yeah, that's inspirational. I haven't had the chance to listen to one yet, but it definitely seems like something that would pique my interest there. It sounds fun, especially after A Full Swing came out. Looking at the story of Joel Damon's caddy and how they all worked together.
Gino.
So that'd be fun to experience there. Well, you as the co-founder, what does a typical day look like for you in the job?
So it's evolved over since the beginning. In the early days, we were really just building it and getting the industry to understand what it means to build a digital media business inside of the golf industry. As time evolved and the brand became more well known and we started to exceed a couple 100,000 followers in social media, really it came down to more running it as a day in day out media business. And we had sales teams, content teams, development teams. We had product teams that were on site at PGA Tour events with the caddies. And really, the goal was to give additional and incremental revenue opportunities to the caddies, build their brands. You mentioned Full Swing. A guy like Gino Benelli has really become a face amongst the caddies, as there are four or five others that really get more publicity than some of the other ones. And it's a tough role. It's a week in, week out role. So our job and what a lot of what we do is we help brands integrate themselves into the caddy's life, whether that's a direct ambassador job that might come up where you're seeing brands on their hats or their shirts, to building content series with the caddies. And so our job day in day right now is to help the caddies monetize their commercial rights and for the caddy network to maintain a content stream that our fans can follow.
That's awesome. Yeah, so you're working on scaling business and making sure it's operational rather than being the actual person on the interviews and doing all that sort of stuff. Is that correct?
Yes, yes. We've engaged varying members of the media industry to handle our podcasts and handle our media elements. You see in the visual behind me, We had a live studio where we would bring in caddies and have a host who was a former PGA Tour caddy.
Awesome.
Most of my role is really focused on the back end business side,
Right.
working with our investors and our sponsors.
Awesome. Yeah. And speaking of that, what kind of major trends in the golf industry or in just the economy in general have affected the way you guys do business?
Well, that's an easy one to answer because it the struggles really start. You can lead back to 2020 and when really the pandemic shut down the marketing space. And from that point on, we had to really look at how reevaluating our business model. Our business model was primarily made up of three forms of revenue: licensing, sponsorship, and then content access. And when we started to go through the pandemic, we really had to look at it from what we were going to do next. Sponsorship would come back, and it has. In fact, we've had two of the best years we've ever had in the company's history. But then we had to really evaluate where was technology going and where was the market as a whole going. So
Right.
we are currently exploring, overall content deals with large content producers. We're exploring large scale e-commerce opportunities. Our brand itself is very popular. We sell merchandise and branded logo apparel that's very popular in the golf space.
Awesome.
And really, those are our primary tools around revenue generation and how we find the right type of partners to help us develop on that end.
Right. Awesome. That's amazing. And how have you guys utilized AI as someone that, that's what my job revolves around. How have you guys benefited from the growth of
You know,
AI?
we're still very much in the early phases of determining how AI is going to really help us because we're a fairly small media company. The traditional tools that AI is going to support for a larger media company, we don't really have the needs or the access to that type of stuff. So we've got to be a lot more nimble in terms of looking at ways to use AI on audience growth, on product development, and
Hmm.
then really from a content both development standpoint also, but a distribution standpoint.
Yep.
And those are things where AI is still evolving, particularly on the distribution side. So
Right.
that's something we're paying close attention to determine, what will be the best access points for us moving forward.
Right. Yeah, it's, I mean, AI is so great at automating a lot of those things, like you said, for a larger company. It's able to automate those administrative tasks and easily repeatable tasks every day that can be done with AI. It's amazing. And from a current state standpoint, what's working well for you guys right now? What's kind of been frustrating in terms of
You know, is
growth?
if you follow the golf industry, there's been a lot of changes in the last 3 or 4 years.
Yep.
Combination of what's happening on the PGA Tour to the combination of what's happening just in amateur golf, and there's probably one of the most unique dynamics occurring that I've seen in my 30 years of the business, which is the amateur side of golf is going, probably some of the best growth mode that it's seen in years. Certainly, that comes out of the pandemic when people really started to find golf as a entertainment tool.
Right.
But all of a sudden, that's not slowing down, and now all of a sudden you're seeing lots more young people, lots more women get into the game, and not necessarily just on a golf course. These are people who are going to the digital experiences. They're going to the 5 iron golfs of the world and those kind of experience based, not necessarily a grassroots side of golf. So for us, and what that translates also on the professional side, with the competing tours of Live and the PGA Tour, that's broken up kind of a different business model over there. And so we've had to really focus more heavily now. While our core product is about our content is about the PGA professional caddies, the reality is the growth and our market growth and our audience growth is going to come through really a lot of new people entering the golf space. We have one of the youngest audiences in all digital media for golf. And a lot of that's based on our content that we develop on a social media standpoint. So we follow the trends, we look at where the market is going. And it's not to say that the professional golf doesn't have the same level of interest. It's just not necessarily growing as much as it
Right.
may have been a few years ago, where the rest of the golf industry is growing significantly. So, how do we, as a content organization, make sure we're engaging and bringing some of that audience into our platform?
Right. Yeah, that's great. Especially appealing to the younger audience, like these other YouTube channels like Good Bob Does Sports, Grant Horvat, all those people are appealing to the younger golfers, not so much the older or your typical golfer that you would think of. And it's obviously worked very well for them. So I'm sure you guys are taking a similar approach there now.
Exactly. They
That's
they
great.
they've done a great job and brought a lot of new people to the game.
Awesome. Yeah. Love to watch those guys. Fun to watch. Definitely something to take note of. And in terms of goals and where you guys are trying to achieve, what's your aim for the next 6 to 12 months? What are you guys trying to do?
So we've sort of gotten to a point where we believe that the brand and the product has an opportunity to live in a much bigger environment than just our own environment.
Mm,
So we've explored large scale strategic partnerships with other media companies, other content businesses, and just other distribution companies. We've always maintained a relatively small space in the golf area. We have a really nice social audience, and we have tens of millions of engagements on a monthly basis.
mm,
But to really build this company and the brand and the bottom line, revenue and profitability is we need to be part of a larger organization. So much of what we're looking for today is who is the right partner. How do we look, basically, how do we start looking like a bigger media company in 2026, 2027?
right,
And that's really going to be a good portion of our focus as we move forward is who could we bolt on to increase their business, give the value to the caddies and the type of content that we develop,
right.
and just bring more monetization opportunities to them across the board.
That's awesome. And what's kind of your plan or strategy to achieve that, to get there?
We, having been in the industry for many years, we have a lot of contacts in a lot of places. And so we work very strategically in really three primary buckets. And those buckets are who are the big media companies, not just in golf, but media companies who are expanding different verticals. The second one would be really a focus on the content development companies, the Good Goods of the world,
Hmm.
the Omaha Productions, those types of companies. And then the third is broader distribution companies. Obviously, with the world of television and streaming changing, there are a number of big distribution companies that are looking for week in, week out content that's different than what you can get in the traditional golf marketplace. So we look at ourselves, as I mentioned, when we had our live studio operating, the live studio was a great way for media companies to get golf content and insight on opportunities that traditionally would not have been seen. Not to mention, obviously, as you know, with the huge increase in gambling and insight shows that go on in there, the caddies, while you can't be a current caddy and participate in any kind of preview type programming,
Hmm.
you can get caddies to be involved with just talking about the general update on what does a course look like the following week, what type of players may benefit from that type of course. So they have stuff that they can get involved with that a number of the larger gambling companies have had interest in as well, because obviously nobody knows the play opportunity as well as a caddy.
Right. Right. That's great. Definitely something that Caddie would have a good insight there. Would ask them for some picks there. Might get a quick one. Well, listen, that's amazing. I really appreciate everything you shared today. One thing I leave all my guests with is the opportunity to share a message to the audience. And I would just ask you, what's the biggest lesson you learned that you think is valuable along your journey that you would want to share with the audience?
I think probably the most important thing is as popular as important as content is today, And for years, there was the term content is king. And while it still is very important, I think anybody who's considering content development really needs to understand how technology and distribution play in the types of content that they're doing. Because in order to monetize your content, there are a number of factors that come into play, and you really need to be strategically on top of what the market is bearing because it will change almost on a yearly basis. And I think probably that's the biggest learning we had was how fast the needs and demands of the content marketplace is changing. And
Gotcha.
certainly AI is going to have a gigantic play in that. It's
Right.
just a little bit early as to knowing exactly how it's going to play out from that
Yep.
standpoint. But it's about to hit us all over the head quickly.
That's right. I don't know if you've seen how much you're on Instagram or stuff like that, but I don't know if you've seen these Sora videos, the Sora
Sure,
AI. They look almost real, but
they
it's scary
do.
what's going on, but
Yes,
you never
and
know.
trust me,
Maybe
IP rights holders that we are, it's both really exciting and also really nerve-wracking when all of a
right,
sudden you realize that your IP is maybe ending up in other hands
right,
that don't have the rights to it. So
mhm,
still, that's hence the point of there's a lot of work to be done still in this
right.
space to get it all ironed out.
That's right. Yeah, there's some good uses for it, and there's some bad uses for it, and hopefully we can get everyone using the good uses for it rather than
Exactly.
taking advantage of the bad stuff. Well, listen, John, it's been amazing having you on today. I really appreciate your time and your expertise, and especially podcasts and content as well. So I appreciate everything you've been able to share today. I think it's been amazing.
Absolutely. Really enjoyed it. Good luck, Ethan.
Thank you.